Jill, we were chatting off here and you were talking about HR being invited to the big table of businesses. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean is that the earlier conversation about how HR can either be a strategic business partner or a transactional enterprise and operation. And in order to be a strategic business partner, you have to have the invitation to, what we call the big table of decision makers, CEO, CFO, inviting HR to hear what they have to say. But once you get the invite, you have to earn that seat at the big table and show how you can impact the business in a positive way in good times and in bad. And so that happens at Accenture. We're a global organization, and HR was able to make that difference. And it's important that we continue to earn that right.
But Jonathan, has HR traditionally sat at the big table? Because of course we know that the CEO, the Chief Operating Officer, the Chief Financial Officer, they're all the important guys in an organization. Is HR just as important?
Well, it is, but not always seen that way. And that was part of the thinking behind changing names some decades ago from personnel management to human resource management. The idea was here as a champion for the key resource of people. And progressive organizations certainly have the HR person there, and I often see that indeed. The difficulty arises often, in fact, in smaller organizations where you can't afford to have an HR director, an HR manager, an HR staff, and etc. One person has to do it all, and that person can well get caught up in the transactional and operational stuff that Steve was talking about and not have time or credibility for this strategic stuff. And we've just, GIBS being a small organization of 120 people, have recently employed an HR manager. And I've said to her, well done that I don't find you in your office, because you've got to be out there talking to the people, getting the field organization and guiding us as to how we can best use this, what in our case absolutely is the key resource.
Elsie, are you out there chatting to the people, being a key resource?
We have the luxury of doing that as a state-owned organization. We have a large HR complement, and I think our organization has bought into the importance of having HR to support the human capital initiatives. And in the last 8 years in the organization, HR has really been in the boardroom at Eskom. We have managed to influence the direction of business. We have managed to focus on the strategic initiatives in the organization, and we've done wonders. And I consider our organization as one organization where you can come and learn about HR practices which are relevant to the African continent as well. So I believe that HR should be at the boardroom at a strategic level, but your big chunk of your HR should be out there with the people, be able to hear and feel what's happening there so that they can input into strategy.
Can I add into that, Stephen, that Eskom has indeed been a case study where the senior leadership, the chief executive and chair, in fact, have been very supportive of human dimension. And that partnership between the HR leader and the business leaders, I think, makes a big difference in the impact that HR can have in an organization.
Yeah, and I think you have to talk both to the people, the employees, and the business leaders, and sometimes separate and sometimes together in order to be able to, you can't run HR effectively, from a corporate office or from an office at home. You need to be out there in the business.
Just picking up on an interesting point coming out of this discussion, excuse me. We do a survey, a high performance workforce survey, and those results that come through, really the highlights of them are that of the top 6 things that are keeping what we call the C-suite, the chief executive officer, chief operating officer, financial officer and so on, awake at night, 4 of those relate to this world of talent and organization, human resources and so on. So that just from that very point, the desire is there from the business leadership to see HR fulfill their role, and the opportunity therefore for HR to in fact move into that space, to do the sort of things that we're talking about doing is absolutely there. The reality is that, that is the opportunity, and how often does that come into effect?
What do you think the risks are if HR is not invited to sit at the big table? What are the risks for an organization?
I think that an area which is so critical in terms of the strategic agenda of the organization becomes something which is dealt with by people who aren't proficient in that space. And so therefore decisions are very often made on the wrong basis. There's not that balancing effect which comes through there. The organizations that we see which are really dealing with this component effectively make the HR function, make the talent management agenda item part of the strategic drumbeat of the organization. So as much as the budgeting process is part of the financial drumbeat of the organization. So talent management, so the HR issues become part of that drumbeat. And it's the real opportunity. And you've got to tie it all together. It can't be seen in isolation. So it's not just about performance management. It's about performance management and learning. It's about strategic planning in terms of your workforce. It's about understanding what's critical and what's core and what is the backup to that. Those are critically important decisions which have to be made because they require investment behind that. And so organizations which are focusing on that component are the ones which are obviously moving themselves into a high-performing organization space.
Jill, what are some of the trends you're seeing globally that are going to take HR forward? Are there new trends there?
Well, I do think there's several trends. One is around really integrating resource planning and forecasting with financial planning and forecasting much more proactively and much more regularly. You know, we went from a year of having it where the economy was such that building up and then it goes way down. I think this year we're going to see both. There are some cases, and from whether it's geographically or industries, where we need to hire and have more people. There's other areas where it still may be on a downturn. And so it's very imperative for HR to be able to deal in both of those environments at the same time. I think additionally, last year we were talking a lot about the generational differences and having organizations that have more generations working together than we've ever had before, and the differences in the generations. We don't hear about that a lot right now. I think it's still there. It's still a real issue, and that's looking towards tomorrow, and I don't think we should lose sight of it. So I think those are two of several things that are important.